Okay, so this is going to be the next video in the series. I believe it's going to be the video number 9. And what I'm going to discuss here is basically a little bit with the cursor, with the set cursor message, okay, that we covered in the previous video. So here's the situation. The set cursor message, okay, comes, here we go. Set cursor message, right, has two parameters, W parameters and L parameter. The W parameter of the cursor takes a handle to a window that contains the cursor, and L parameter, okay, in a low-word specifies the result of the VM non-client hit test message, such as HT client, HT system menu, and so on. And in the high word, it specifies the mouse, which basically specifies which message generated that set cursor message. So, and in the return value, if you return true, if the return value is true, the default window procedure from the child will stop executing. If it's false, it will continue to execute. Okay, the child procedure. So I'm gonna go into details right now for you. So let me show you here. Let's say you have here our application that I already pre-compiled. Let me just exit from here and then compile it again for you. So here, let me go here. So let me rerun it and compile it. So it's okay. So watch carefully what's happening. First, the mouse is outside the window at all. It's completely outside. Nothing happens. No messages are being received. So like if you go here, I specified here message loop. So whichever message goes through the message loop is going to show message loop. And if it goes to the message directly to the parent procedure, it's going to just show message parent procedure. Okay. So let's take a look here. So look at mouse. Now look at the messages. Mouse enters the title bar. So look what happened. We received message 160, which is non-client mouse move, non-client area. We received the message 32, which is basically set cursor, which was, let's see here, this was set cursor, so which does 32. Okay, and then we received also 132, the message 132 would go. 132, 32, 160, that's non-client mouse move. Okay, here we go, 132, which is basically non-client hit test. Okay, so it determines which part of the window the mouse is in at the moment. So here's the thing. When we have, let's say we moved into the client area, when the mouse goes from non-client area to a client area from both sides, look what we have. We have first message, which is 512, which is message mouse move in the client area. Then we have 132, which is the hit test. And then we have 32, which is set cursor. Okay, so those are 3 procedures. Sometimes the 132, the non-client hit test, might not be there. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's optimization or something. But anyway, so those are, like, as you can notice, when I move in the mouse, but like the 3 messages show up. Okay, so it's 512, 132, and 32. And now we have like a client. We have like a small window inside our main window I created. Okay, so watch what happens. When the mouse moves inside the client window, it changes. Okay, the mouse changes from an arrow to an arrow with a help sign on it. So let's look at the code here. So basically what happens is this is the code that we're executing there. So actually, let me go back here to explain the logic behind it. Okay, so here's the thing. So we have here, okay, so we have our main program here, main program window. Inside the main program window, in the client area of the main program window, we have our child window. The white area is considered child window. And then inside the child window, we have our cursor mouse. So what happens when you move your mouse first from the client area into the non-client, into the client area of the child window, the system is going to send to your child window procedure a set cursor, basically going to set cursor message. Okay, it's going to go from basically the system, the operating system is going to send you one of the messages. Going to send you is going to be the set cursor message. Okay, the set cursor message, in our case, the child window procedure, it's not going to process the message, but it can, if it can be done. That's not a problem. But in our case, we will not process this message. So what will happen? It will call the default window procedure for the child window. The default child procedure, part of it, part of the implementation of the set cursor message, what it does, it's going to call the parent procedure. Okay, so it's going to go from the default child procedure. The set cursor message is going to call the child procedure. So it's pretty much going to send to the parent procedure the set cursor message. The set cursor message then is going to process this code, and then depending on whether the return value is true or false, two things will happen. If the return value is true, the system will not going to call the default window procedure back. It's going to end processing at that point. If it's false, it's going to call the default window procedure again. So it's going to go from child window procedure to default window procedure for the child. Then it's going to go to the window procedure for the parent. And then depending on the implementation of the set cursor message, it's either going to end here, or the system then, once the window procedure finishes, if the set cursor message returns false, it's going to call the default window procedure of the child again. Let me prove you how that works here. So let's look at the code here first. Okay, so here's the situation. So we have two functions. So we have the window procedure here. I'm gonna go over this in the next video, how to create a new window there. Okay, but let's skip here. So we have a main window procedure, and we have the set cursor. Okay, here we have set cursor. Here we're testing if the set cursor is a child window, if the message is coming from the child window. If it is, we're calling the load cursor, which is trying to load the cursor with an instance of null, which means we're telling the system to give us the default, one of the predefined cursors that come with the system, and the type of we want it's IDC help, which is basically a resource, making to resource like ID it's 32651. Okay, so we're asking for that cursor, and then we are setting the cursor for our application. We're calling the set cursor to set it for our application. Okay, so that's when the mouse cursor here moves into the child window, that's what we get. We get the arrow with the help button. Okay, but what happens there is that the reason we're getting that is because we're returning true. Okay, in the parent procedure for the set cursor, we are returning true. Now the child procedure, now if we were to return false, let me do this here. Let me change this to false. Okay, let me exit the program here and recompile. Okay, and run it again. Now watch what happens when I move the mouse cursor into the window. Do you see the arrow didn't change? And let me explain what happened there. The reason the arrow didn't change to our cursor, the one with the help, the question mark, okay, is because of this. Our child procedure, our child class, let me go back here. As you can see here, This is our child class. I define as Win class second as a Win class 2 is for the child window. And look what the cursor has here. For the cursor, we specified an arrow cursor. Okay, so that's specified. So if we that's the default style for the cursor for that window. So when we look here, when you go to here and go set cursor, when you look here at the remarks, when it says set cursor, right, the parent window, like the default window procedure, passes the set cursor message to the parent window before processing. If the parent window returns true, further processing is halted. So that means the default window procedure for the child is no longer executed. Passing the message to window parent window gives the parent control of the cursor in a child window. The default window procedure also uses this message to set the cursor to an arrow if it is not in the client area, or to the registered class cursor if it's in the client area. So what happens here, because we specified here in our code, when we went here, so in our parent procedure set cursor, we specified that the return value is false. What happened is that the system here, here is false. So assuming this here is true, but we specified false. So what happened? It went back. It called the default window procedure from the child window, which originally called our main procedure. So it went back to the default child procedure, and then the child procedure called loaded the default cursor for us. Okay, so that's why you see that when we move here, nothing changed. It's the same cursor. Now let me redo this again here, just to give you one more here. Yeah, let it go. There you go. Here, let me redo this. So let's return to true. Okay, let's recompile. And now watch this. Like when we go here, it's no longer, it's an arrow with a question mark, because it's no longer calling the default procedure again from the child window. It's just basically ending the processing at the parent procedure when it's done. Okay, and now, so that's for this item. Now let's look at the other ones here. Let's go here and let's look here. So let's look at so this is a basic procedure. And what happens when you get the non-client hit test message? So let me compile it here again. Hold on. Okay, so when we move here, look, when we move here, we get a message. This is non-client mouse move, which is message 160. And then set cursor, it's 32. Okay, and when we look at the set cursor here, keep in mind that set cursor needs to determine what kind of mouse cursor to set based on specific locations, okay, of the window. So when we look, when I move my, let's see, you can see the message. So when we move the mouse cursor, look into the title area of the window. Let me just do it again, like look slowly. Okay, so a couple things happen. So first, we got the message 160. Okay, so which is basically non-client mouse move. So it means the mouse moved into non-client area of the window. Second message we received was message here. It's 132, which is basically non-client hit test, determines which part of the non-client area the mouse is in currently. And then finally message 32, which is set cursor. Now, so when we look at the logic here, graphics, so look, so like this icon, like if you had, you can have HT system menu, which is basically this area here. We can have the minimize button, maximize button, close button. Okay, the title. There are a bunch of options available. You have to look at the documentation, right? Because there are a couple options. So the way that you would determine this, when you, let's say this is your main window procedure, you're switching the message. You go to the set cursor, okay. for for the message. So then you take the low word of the L parameter, and that's going to tell you. So there's another switch statement inside, and then it's going to tell you which part of the window the cursor is in, and based on that you can set different cursors depending what works for you for that area. So you can have for the system menu, for the close, for the min max button, for the border on the side. I just for to reduce space, to minimize space. I didn't include all of the options, but if you look at the documentation, there are a bunch of options available for you. So, but let me show you here in the code. So look what happens when and I'm just going to show you here also. So when you see, like, you get a bunch of messages. However, keep also in mind that when you move from the client area of the window to the non-client area of the window, the message 132 for whatever reason doesn't seem to be there. So I'm not sure if it just keeps track. The system keeps track. It already knows where the mouse was before, and it uses that information to pass to the set cursor message for optimization reasons. I'm not sure, but for example, look, when you go from outside into the inside, you get 132, so 160, 132, and 32 messages. And but then when you move inside, see, then once you're inside, we're just only getting message 160 and message 32. When we go sideways, we get 160 and 32. So it's, I think, I'm not sure why it's not getting the non-hit tester, but it's probably keeping track anyways, right? So because it tells you, like, for example, look how the message changes. Like if you go to the minimize button, maximize button, close, if I go, so different area. Look, this is again another one, like when you look at, so it's the arrow with the exclamation mark. Okay, so once we exit from there, we get two messages, pretty much. Not the message 160 is non-client mouse move, 512 is client mouse move. Okay, so when you're moving from the non-client area to client area, we all getting the hit test with the 132. But when we're moving from the client area to non-client area, we only get 160 and 32. But it shows you, like, you can set different cursor, for different parts of the window. Okay, so let's look at the border. Look, see, this is the border. Like, you can say an arrow. You can also specify. So let me look at the code here for you. Let me show you the code here. So the code is here, like so HT right. So basically, so that's the right border. Okay, so it's going to set the cursor to IDC size west east. If the mouse moves over the HT system menu, then the cursor goes to IDC help. So which is basically help icon of the cursor, and the close and max button go to the hand. Okay, and min button goes to the hand, and default is arrow. So here's the thing though, but you need to keep in mind that see, the window has bunch of borders, right? So you have to specify for each border separately the thing, because when you look at the bottom border, it goes to the, like here, it will go to the default. It will not capture the lower border, right? So it's only going to capture HT right. Okay, so you have to specify HT right, HT left, I think HT top and HT bottom. You have to separately specify what kind of mouse cursor you want for those locations. Okay, so like here, see this arrow, but when you go sideways, you can then size it, So yeah, so that's the kind of explanation of the mouse. So let's see here. And now, so this is, so basically, like, it tells you, like, which part of the window the mouse cursor is in. Now let's go here. So like here, so let's look at a little bit more detailed here. Okay, so here's the thing. So let's say our mouse cursor is in the client area. Okay, so let's do this here. So it goes into the client area. So what we get is this message 512, which is the mouse move. We get in message 132, which is the non-client hit test to determine which part of the window where the mouse is, and then set cursor for that part of the window. Okay. So keep in mind also that the hit test is in relation to your screen, while the mouse move message determines the position coordinates relative to the upper left corner of the client area. So step one, so what happens is that a mouse is moved in the client area of our window. The system will post a window message mouse move into a post message queue for our window. So in our window, we're going to receive mouse move message. Then our get message loop is going to retrieve that message, okay, here. And then our dispatch message is going to call our window procedure. Our window procedure then it's going to process that message, okay, through basically through the mouse move. But in our case, we're not processing the mouse move, so we're going to pass the message to our default window procedure to have that process. Okay. Then step two, the system will then send not post AVM non-client hit test to the window procedure to determine which part of the window corresponds to the particular screen coordinate, so as to determine the position of the cursor hotspot. So in this case, the system is sending directly, it's calling our window procedure directly. And again, we are not processing that message in our window. In this case, we are not processing that message. The non-client hit test message is not being processed here. However, the return value, so it goes to the default window procedure. However, the return value is stored by the system. So the system will know where in particular in screen coordinates, when the hotspot of the mouse cursor is. And then finally, step three, the system is going to send us a set cursor message. Again, it's going to be sent, so it's not going to be posted to our window procedure, or to the window procedure of the window that actually has the mouse cursor in there. And it's going to specify the window procedure. It's going to specify which window is to receive that, which window, where the mouse is moved, which window, okay. And in the high word, it's going to specify which window message initiated the call to the set cursor, and then the result of the hit test. So like that's going to be in the L parameter option there. So Windows is going to keep track of that for us. So it's going to keep track of the result of the non-client hit test, and then at the set cursor message is going to retrieve that information, and it's going to be sent to our window procedure. We're going to process that. So basically now it's going to go to window procedure, then we're going to go to our main switch statement, and then it's going to go to our message, and then we're going to process the low word. We're going to extract from low word which part of the window the mouse is currently in, and based on that we're going to set our cursor to whatever we need the cursor to be, okay, for that part of the window. So that's the thing. Yeah, so that's what we need to remember here. So it's going to be like a short video, but it's important because it gives you a couple basic concepts, okay, which are important here. So like, for example, when you move mouse, when we're moving mouse from a non-client area to the client area, so what happens is that we get a bunch of messages, but the mouse will change. But when we go from the other side, the mouse didn't change because we didn't specify for that part of the window here. We didn't specify, so the system uses the default. So I mean, like in our code, it calls basically the default set cursor option. Okay, it's not calling any, instead of HD write or HD system or HD close, HD max button, min button, it's just calling the default there. All right, so hopefully that will make it a little bit clear for you. So okay, here's good. So you had 512 mouse move into client area, then you got hit test, and then set procedure. So that's how it, so that's the main thing to remember here is that whenever you're processing the set cursor, right, to know whether it's true or false, because if it's false, it will recall the child default window procedure. If you call true, then it won't. However, if you setting if you're not calling the child, if you're processing the set cursor message yourself, whether it be in the main window procedure or the child window procedure, then I'm sorry, if you're calling that, if you're processing the set cursor in the child window procedure, and you don't intend to call the parent window procedure, right? Then whether it's true or false, it's irrelevant. Okay, the same thing if in our case here, like if we just in our client main window client area, the true or false is irrelevant in this case because we're not calling the default window procedure. We're processing the message ourselves, right? In the parent window procedure. All right. Yeah. So I just wanted to reiterate, and so how that works here. Yeah. And so here how we're testing this. So let's say we have a set cursor message. So we're extracting the handle to the window from the W parameter because remember. The W parameter is the handle to a window that contains the cursor. Okay, so if you have, let's say, bunch of buttons or whatever inside the client area, it will tell you which window has the cursor. So we're extracting that here. And then we're comparing to make sure it's our child window. So here we've created our child window here. Okay, I'm gonna go over that in the next video, how to create basic windows inside it. Okay, so but it's basically repetitive task, like it's pretty much the same procedure how we created the main window. And then so it's going to determine if it's our child procedure. So we're going to load cursor IDC help, and we're going to set the cursor for that window basically. Okay, so we're going to load the cursor. Think of loading the cursor as to loading the computer into the computer memory. Okay, into our program memory, the cursor. Okay, that's how you think of it this way. And then set cursor is basically setting the cursor for the window itself at that point. So you first load it into the memory and then you set it. Okay. And if it's not the case, if it's just outside, if it's not inside our child window, so the cursor is outside somewhere, then we execute this code here. Okay, we're checking to see if it's HT right, HT system menu, HT close, max button, min button. So if you look at the documentation for the cursor, for the VM set cursor message, it will tell you, what options are available to you, and based on that, you can set it accordingly. Okay, and the default option for us is an arrow. Okay, and then we return true. So we basically want to stop any processing afterwards. So even if it goes back, so we don't want to go back to the child window procedure, any processing. Okay. So yeah, so this is going to be a short video. Just want to explain, the set cursor, and the basic messages. That's when you work with them, you can, gives you a better idea, better understanding how they work. Okay, so yeah, and you can, basically you can test it yourself. Look, you can generate it, and the way the messages are here being printed are basically into the standard output. Okay, so if you combine with a different program, then whatever its standard output is, you can specify, to print out those messages for you by using like a printf statement I'm using here. Okay, for the messages. Okay, thank you then.